would like to thank very much the League of Cities and as well as the other organizers of this meeting. I, owing to another speaking commitment earlier, I was only able to arrive about halfway through the talk of Dr. Lansana. And, well, I would just like to make a few comments on this. First of all, I think that the role of local governments in terms of providing the push for family planning and successful family planning is extremely critical. And I think that a number of the conclusions of Dr. Lansana, which were done in a very rigorous empirical study, pretty much approximate some of the conclusions that were made in a less, how would you put it now, in a less rigorous fashion that Congresswoman Kimiko Huangco, with whom I am working in terms of the passage of the House Bill 4244 on the reproductive health bill. And it was very interesting that Congressman Cojuangco, who used to be a mayor in Pangasinan, did a comparison between a Pangasinan town, Sasmuan, and Tagum in Davao Oriental, and found that basically, I just wanted to say that the activist family planning push that was headed up by Mayor Uy of Tagum had very significant effects in various dimensions, including the reduction of poverty. So successful was family planning in terms of reducing poverty that, in fact, one of the effects of it was that as I understand it, the city of Tagum was, after a few years, was declared ineligible for receiving CCT funds to, as part of the government CCT program, because it was no longer regarded as, a city that had a very significant number of its people living in poverty. But nevertheless, I think that the details of this and the mechanics of the family planning program in Tagum is something that can be shared in another context. And these were data that were provided for me by Congresswoman Cojuangco. The one thing that came out here in terms of the comparative study that she made was the role of political will at the local level in terms of pushing a successful program. And it does seem like here the role of the city government, and in particular the city mayor, was fairly central in making sure that the local family planning program would in fact be undertaken. So things are happening at the local level, not just in Malagbalay and in Tagum, but in other areas. But I think what is important is that these local efforts must really be coordinated with a national level program. And here, let me just say that from my brief study that I made of the family planning programs in Thailand, in Vietnam, and Indonesia, um, uh, two things became very clear, particularly with respect to Vietnam and in Indonesia. One is, you know, the very, very great importance of a nationally coordinated public family planning program. I think that I will not belabor this point because I have written about it elsewhere, that if you take the if you take various variables, including governance and economic strategy and corruption, I think one can say that the one big variable that made the difference between sustained and dynamic economic development between the Philippines and our three neighbors was an activist family planning program. I think that is the case in Thailand, that is definitely the case in Vietnam, and that is definitely the case in Indonesia. The second thing that I would just like to say here is that the role of the grassroots efforts, the role of local government units, the role of political party structures at the local level, and the role of civil society at the local level was very, very prominent, especially in the case of Indonesia and Vietnam. In other words, family planning was not just a nationally imposed policy from the center. It was really supplemented by very, very strong support from local government and from local organizations. So much so that one can say that with respect to Vietnam and Indonesia, and to some extent of Thailand too, that family planning in fact became a mass movement. So napakahalaga ho yata nung local mass organizing capacities in terms of making family planning successful. And I think this is something that, as a last point, I think this is something that we really need to be able to learn as we tackle the reproductive health program in the country. Kailangan talaga na even if we pass the law, we really need active support at the grassroots in terms of implementation, and do not just rely on the Department of Health or the Population Commission to be able to push this. Not kailangan talaga that it has to be more than just a top-down program. Having said that, my last point is we're now at a very crucial stage in terms of pushing the reproductive health bill. We are in the House confident that we have the majority with us. The minority at this point has been playing delaying tactics, that basically they are trying to tie up the passage of the legislation with infinite questioning. Even if the questions have been repeated so often. I myself have been defending the bill last month for 3 nights in a row, and I can say that the questions that were asked of me are now being asked of my colleagues who are defending, like Representative Marcoleta. Kaya you cannot blame the people if there are occasional outbursts, like so many of the mothers that have been supporting the reproductive health bill staged a protest rally within the House of Representatives the other night kasi pagod na ho sila. They've been really waiting and waiting, and we have delaying tactics. Unfortunately, we also have a number of some senators, I will not mention their names, okay, except they're famous entertainment figures, who have been similarly playing the dilatory tactics in the Senate. And I think one of the messages that I can can bring to you as members of local governments is you've got to help us out. No? You've got to help us out by pushing your congressional representatives na you really have to get this bill to the floor for voting at this point in time. So we really need that support, and we are confident that both in the House and the Senate, if we bring it to the floor at this stage, we will most likely prevail in this vote. Now, the danger point here is that as it comes closer to election time, you know, as we move into 2012, we reach a danger point because many of our congressional representatives and in the Senate begin to worry about the pervasive political influence of an institution whose name need not be mentioned. Okay? And ang kinakatakutan ho nila is that maski 5 to 10% lang ang directly influenced ng institution na ito, in close electoral contests, that can be the swing vote. So, this is why President Aquino called up Speaker Belmonte yesterday, please try to get this bill to the voting stage. And we got a commitment from the Speaker Belmonte that yes, he will set up the rules, but he could not promise a vote before Christmas. So I just wanted an update on this because all of us are in this thing together now. And if we allow the people who are trying to delay the bill to succeed, then I think that this will have not very good consequences for the country. So let's all lobby our representatives together. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
Maraming pong salamat, the Honorable Congressman Walden F. Bello.